And welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Cameron Reigle.
And have we got a legendary lineup on the Kongversation for you today. Our first guest is an artist, animator, and voice actor whose game credits include Battletoads, Killer Instinct, Donkey Kong Country, Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures, and Yooka-Laylee. Specifically, he is the designer of the modern Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, and of course, the voice actor behind beloved DK Vine icon, Tricky. Aside from his duties, aside from his duties at Playtonic, he's currently one half of DK Creations Ltd. And the artist of the comic Salamandos. Please welcome to the show, Kev Bayliss.
Really? Is Kev Bayliss here too? I gotta tell the King Earthwalker. Sorry about that. Yeah. Thank you very much for having us on the show. Thank you very much.
Yes, but surprise, you can't have DK Creations without the D. And the D is one of the most legendary game composers of all time. Over the course of 28 years at Rare, he's known for his music founded games like Battletoads, Donkey Kong Country 2, and sometimes Donkey Kong Country 3, as well as Diddy Kong Racing and Star Fox Adventures, to name a few. Following Rare, he's providing music for Yooka-Laylee, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, Snake Pass, Tamarin, and of course, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. He's keeping it saxy. Please welcome the one, the only, David Wise.
Thank you very much. In fact, on that note, I think it deserves one of these. There we go.
I'm glad you brought props. I always appreciate a guest who brings their own ways to keep amused during our nonsense.
So thank you very much for having me on the show, and hello.
Yes, hello. Before we get started, and we have a lot of ground to cover in a relatively short amount of time, I do want to take this opportunity, and I think we'll both probably want to I guess, self-indulgently gush to the both of you just a little bit, because, we're the Kongversation, we're DK Vine, and Kev, in particular, how often is it that, let's say, a Tolkien fan can actually sit down with old J.R.R. and tell him how much he loves Bilbo Baggins? That doesn't happen. That can't happen because he's dead. But Kev, you are responsible for my all-time favorite video game character, Diddy Kong. And I know this kind of thing is always a collaborative process, and there are lots of cooks in the kitchen. But, all the same, I just wanted to thank you for giving my life so much joy over the years. Because, as a kid, Diddy was the first time I think a video game character connected with me as more than just pixels on a screen. And I felt the real hopes and dreams behind him. And so much of who he was conveyed in your design. And yeah, he's a monkey in a hat, but I've written dissertations on why Diddy is the ultimate representation of the millennial experience. So between that and the way you helped design the modern Donkey Kong, you helped lay the foundation for my favorite video game series and ultimately my own career as an adult. So thank you. And David, I mean, what can I say? Because outside of gaming, my other nerdy passion is music. And not having any older siblings or any friends who were into music, I didn't really have any outlets open to me to discover anything. So while a lot of people of a similar age to me can point to something like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, or I don't know, Smashing Pumpkins as their first love, for me it was the music of you and Eveline in those Donkey Kong Country games. Because before I owned the official cassettes and then the CDs and then digital files, I would sit in front of the TV with a tape recorder so I could take it around with me and listen to it on the go. And, wow. I'm a huge Beatles nerd now, but the bedrock of my musical taste were laid by you. And from you and your compositions, I discovered prog rock and new age and world music and Phil Collins, of course. So what I'm saying is you both basically raised me. So it's all your fault.
Okay, well, that's a huge accolade there. Thank you very much. So I'm glad you liked it.
Glad I liked it. Cameron, is there anything you would like to get out in the open all weepy before we start?
I'm not sure what else I could add that wouldn't just be incoherent gibberish. But the original Donkey Kong Country was kind of the first video game I saw that kind of opened my eyes to, this is what the potential of this medium is. Feeling like I was playing a cartoon essentially with this brilliant soundtrack, these really fun characters. I fancy myself somewhat of an artist. Kev, your work has always been a giant inspiration. I think that's kind of evident in a lot of the stuff I've done. And Dave's music has helped keep me sane, trying to crack away at my various projects. And it's just such a thrill to talk to both of you. And yeah, I really don't know what else to say.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for us both to be here.
So nice to hear, obviously. It's very flattering because at the end of the day, we're just two middle-aged, approaching old age veterans from the what a lot of people, I guess, consider as a bit of a golden era in video games. Because there was a lot of changes back then, wasn't there? There were the move on to 16-bit, and then there was the introduction of the rendered 3D graphics, and then there was glimpses of real 3D too, and before we obviously moved on to the N64. But that time, it was a great time for us to both be involved in it, and we never thought that we'd be talking about it sort of 20, 30 years later to people that we had no idea it would have had so much of an impact on. So it's lovely to hear, and thank you very much. And we're just happy to be talking about it still and banging on about the old days.
The good old days.
But I mean, there's plenty of there's great new stuff happening all the time too. So I try not to get too hung up on talking about the past all the time, because I've got a room full of old memorabilia and stuff like that from when I used to work at Rare. And a lot of the stuff you do look at and you kind of screw your eyes up in a bit and go, oh did I really do this? And did I really finish this game? And it actually went out on the shelves like this. And I'm not going to say anything, WrestleMania. And, but then you've got, games like Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong Country that still hold up well today. And so, yeah, I think there were a couple of gems that we were very, very fortunate enough to be involved with, and also to be able to put our personal stamp on them. It's just a lovely feeling. So, and I'm really pleased, and I'm really happy when I hear people say that it's made them smile. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Well, and we'll be getting into plenty of discussion about the old days here as well. But before we do that, I want to discuss what you're both currently working on, because you two have a history of working together on the same projects, across the span of 3 decades, going on 4 decades now. But
wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And Kev, I want to know what your secret is to eternal youth, because honestly, I can't decipher the pictures of you now versus the pictures of you from the 90s. You look the same.
Photoshop. It's one word, Photoshop and filters. No, actually, I've never understood using filters, because surely that doesn't look anything like you do look in real life. I don't quite understand why people use them, because I hate to go out and then people not recognize who you are if they want to say hi to you. But no, I don't have any kids, and so I don't have some of the stresses that, as you can see, looking at two of us.
Exactly, I clearly have 100.
But this is my real hair, but it is going grey now, so it's catching up with me.
Oh, well,
there's one good thing about my head of hair is that I never went grey.
I said it when we went to the game develop conference when we were in Brighton. Remember, Dave, when we went on and picked up our award for Yooka-Laylee on behalf of Platonic. I think creating video games just sort of help you keep a certain degree of youth, I think, because your frame of mind, it's perhaps a little bit immature at times. And so I think you can behave a little bit like a kid because you have to creating video games. And I think it's stuck.
I don't know what you mean. Sorry.
So I think video games, we are lucky enough to work in that industry. And I do think it keeps you fairly young at heart. So
this is going to be great because I want to parlay my Donkey Kong journalism site into also a lifestyle and wellness brand. So we're getting some good advice here. Yeah, I want to be the next
make video games.
But yeah, you two, you generally, Kev is on art and David's on music in these classic games. So the two of you coming together and forming DK Creations as your own independent venture, I think it was surprising for some because it's just like, Kev Bayliss and David Wise together. Where did the idea to launch your own creative studio come from?
You want to go ahead, Dave? Going
back to it originally, it was probably one of these ideas that we had over a drink, probably somewhere in Austria, when we were talking about creative ideas. And what I'd always wanted to do was an album, and I wanted some great graphics for it. So obviously, who am I going to ask but Mr. Kev Bayliss? And it morphed from there, really. And we wanted something. There's a whole load of stuff that you've got to do, especially if you're doing an album. You need to get your album. If we're going to put it on vinyl, we've got to get it pressed, and then we've got to get all the inlays and stuff. And it's quite a long process. So we're looking for a bit of delivery process, and it morphed into this idea of the comic. And I'm sure Kev will explain in a few minutes. You've got this fantastic software it's very good at making comic type stuff. So it seemed to be a good fit. So Kev had come up with this idea for Salamandos, and I thought, that's the perfect idea to add some 80s kind of retro vibe to the soundtrack. So I think Kev's going to take it from here.
Well, that's what we're all about, aren't we? The retro vibe.
Yes.
As I say, I do like a lot of the modern games out there. They blow me away, but there's just this charm to that retro 80s era. Again, another golden age in movies and with video games. And so it made us smile when we were, I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize that Dave and I are good friends anyway. Since we began working at Rare in the late 80s, would have been 1987, I met Dave.
Yeah, I was probably
when he had
15.
lots of hair.
Kev was 10. Yeah, something like that.
He used to call me the Sprite, I remember. But we'd always worked together on plenty of projects because Dave was basically the only musician up to a certain point. And so we'd have to sort of chat about what sound effects were needed and what music was needed for this game and that game. But it wasn't until the sort of late 90s, mid-90s that I started... I'd always had a bit of a party piece and done a bit of singing at some of the Christmas parties.
That was it. That's where it came from.
Used to have.
Sorry.
And so I enjoyed doing that. And Dave was also in his spare time. His hobby was he actually an ABBA tribute band and many more.
I don't know what you
mean. Acts, weren't you? And so,
absolutely,
I joined him on one occasion, and then we enjoyed it that much. We kept doing it, and for quite a few years, we were doing a 3-piece covers band. It's myself, Dave, and a great guitarist called John Bradbury, and we just had such a laugh doing it. It wasn't for money; it was just for the beer, really, and for a good time in a pub on a Saturday evening. And so, it was a good opportunity to let your hair down. And over the years, obviously, we've been best friends. Dave was my best man when I got married, and we've done this and that and the other together with countless ski trips together, countless trips to America and Japan together with various game releases at Rare. But then we said, I think we're missing a trick here. I think we need to try and do a bit more of this because we love the game conventions and we love the traveling aspect of stuff. So why not mix our music together? We should have done it a long time ago and create something which we can perform and just sort of bring some enjoyment. And because we'd both been pretty much in the industry for about 30 years, we said, well, it would be a great way to celebrate that. And I think I'd moved house and made a lot of changes in my life as well. Let's do something new shortly after I started at Playtonic in our spare time. So we've got a hobby rather than me just sitting watching Netflix. And so we said, well, we'll do this. And we always wanted to come up with something that was our own to gig when we did these retro conventions, because it's all very nice playing Donkey Kong tunes and all of the music from Star Fox Adventures, and we love all that, but we wanted to also bring something new and say we're not just all about the old days. And so this is when we started to put together the idea of Salamandos, and I came up with a brief story which I sort of elaborated on and drew some silly characters. And says I bought the comics software, as Dave mentioned, and I'd always loved comics, but never really had enough time to get into them. So I started just messing around, drawing and seeing what this software could do. Well, I can put a comic episode together and we can get the music together, and we can use this whole thing as a sort of a graphics light show behind us as we perform in future. And we can let this story unfold as we do more and more gigs and just see what happens with it. And this is where we are now. We've just got the first episode out. It's only taken a year and a half to do, but I think we've had to say we set up another company, and we also had to learn to set up the website and this and that and the other, and write the music and put it all into place. And so now we're well underway with it now, and we've begun. And I've got the second episode here, which will be ready to release very soon, and we'll just keep going and expanding upon it as long as people keep buying it. So, or as long as people just enjoy it. So. It's just something we wanted to do.
So in case you hadn't noticed, it's loosely based on amphibians, which kind of harks back to our history, our video game history. And it's got that vibe going back to that kind of thing where we're taking inspiration from the 80s and amphibians at the same time.
Yeah, we thought we'd spawn something new.
So that's where we are with it. And again, as Kev said, we find ourselves at conventions, and it's very hard to promote something that you've done in the past. So having something that's fresh and new that you're excited about is a lot easier to. And it's just nice. When conventions start again, in fact, we just had that conversation a couple of hours ago. It would be nice to be able to take our own merchandise and present that instead of not having any merchandise at all, really. So that's kind of a good way of putting it. And that's where the idea really spawned from, having something interactive that we can do at festivals, which is and conventions and that kind of stuff.
So I'm sure there are those listening to this right now, because we promoted it as Kev Bayliss and David Wise on the Kongversation, and they might not be fully aware yet what Salamandos is. So in your own words, what is Salamandos?
It's kind of a audio graphic novel. I mean, what do you mean? What is it, a product, or what is the story? It's a amphibious adventure, but I don't want to give too much of the story away, really. But I think one of the first things I wanted to do, which obviously we couldn't do it, but maybe we can build upon it, and we're perhaps going the wrong way about it, but I wanted to do a musical. And I would love to have seen a stage show of a video game which we'd created, like Donkey Kong the Show or something like that. And so it would be great to have this set of characters that gives a story and becomes some kind of great big show on Broadway, and everybody goes and sees it. And I think it was ever since I saw it was an episode of The Simpsons with they did a show version of Planet of the Apes, and it just made me laugh. And I thought I'd love to do something like that becomes a big stage show.
If you'd like to see Donkey Kong Country as a musical, I recommend checking out the 90s cartoon, or maybe don't recommend it, depending on your point of view. But
yeah, I saw one of those episodes.
I just want to get on stage and wear a Salamandos costume that looks like a proper Salamandos character and just jump around on stage like the Animal Crackers or whatever they were. The banana splits. Banana splits. I'm going all American.
Yes. And for me, in a very similar vein, it's more about having, rather than an album release, it's an album that kind of unfolds over time, and it's a whole lot more interactive because we've got the graphics and we've got the story, and they work really well together. And that's far more interesting for me than just putting out an album and saying, there you go, that's another album. It's a bit more involved. There's a story, there's some graphics, and hopefully, as Kev said, an interactive comic would hopefully be a little more engaging.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing. It was it started off, I think that the problem is because we're creative people, and you wake up in the middle of the night with a stupid idea, as I did last night, which my wife absolutely loves. But you start messing around writing on your phone, oh, this happens next, or this. And then I thought, hang on, why aren't we doing this with the comic? And it's probably going to evolve a little bit more, but already the first episode, we put some links to artists that we met actually while we were over there at MagFest a couple of years ago, and also any of our friends or people that might want a leg up and to get their graphics shown. I think you've got the opportunity to put some links in there and perhaps make the story a little bit interactive, so you might want to look into the backgrounds and you might catch a glimpse of an icon or an avatar of somebody that you know or have seen before. And if you click on it, it should take you to their website. And if they're a musician or an artist, hopefully it'll drag some customers their way or some viewers their way, if you like. But also, it's not going to be just a couple of pages of a comic story. We've also got some tutorials in there because Dave and I say we've got a lot of years of experience working in the industry. And so we can give a little bit of feedback and advice, or just tell people our mistakes as we go along too. Well, this is taking too long to do, so don't do this, because this is a new thing for us too. But I think the idea of giving out some tutorials and a bit of help, and also interviewing the odd artist or musician that we know, and just featuring some other people, it's probably going to be more of a Salamandos magazine interactive comic album than just a story now. So it's just trying to squeeze as much as you can into small episodes each time and keep it interesting is a good way to also do that, I think, is by featuring other people's work too. So I'm quite happy to do that, especially if it gives us a few extra pages. You
both also performed together, as you alluded to, live as part of the Dave Wise 5 with Kev on vocals. And This includes the Salamandos theme, which you both debuted at MagFest 2020, right before the pandemic shut down the world, shuttered everything. Inevitably then, because Cameron and I were both there at MagFest, we were like the front row of that concert. So we heard that song right before the world ended. And that became the official lockdown anthem, probably for the both of us. It was lodged in our head for months and months as we were scrounging for toilet paper. I'm going to play a little bit of it here right now for the audience so they can get a taste of it, and they too can suffer the earworm. So this is a question for David. Your music has always been primarily instrumental in your works. What was it like collaborating with Kev on a song with lyrics?
I mean, to be honest, even I'm sure most people have figured this out now, but all of the Donkey Kong stuff were probably primarily songs that should have had lyrics in the first place. They certainly have lyrics for me, even though nobody's ever heard them. I think when you're designing music, you've always got a type of song or a type of lyric that's in the background anyway, because it makes writing music so much easier if you've got a lyric to work with. Lyrics suggest rhythm, they suggest movement. So if there's something going on in the background that has to you something you could sing, it translates very well to, say, a flute or a trumpet or whatever instrument you're going to put at it. And so it was kind of easy when it came to doing it with vocals, except vocals sound a whole lot better when you've got somebody who can actually sing on them.
But unfortunately, it was stuck with me. So it's interesting you say about the track being the last thing that you heard really that got into your heads before the dreaded lockdown. But the other thing was completely unintentional. Okay, a bit of a spoiler. There's a main villain in this story called Virus, spelt Virus. And it was more or less September, the year prior to MagFest, when Dave and I were in Sweden, and we just finished, we'd done our little talk at the show on how we made video games. It was great. And we sold a few Salamandos t-shirts because we said, well, let's start building on this idea. And I can remember we were talking, waiting for the train to take us back to the airport. And I said, the villain needs to be like, I can't say what he is, but I mean, I'm going to call him Virus because they're chasing this virus. And Dave said, oh, well, I've got this instrument. It's perfect for that. And it's called Virus and it's a synth. And so I'll always use Virus whenever he appears or whatever. And I didn't want any negativity from it because I thought people think Kevin's singing about the virus and cashing in on COVID. And it wasn't like that at all. It was just coincidental and it's spelled differently anyway. But yeah, that was the story that is this virus thing. And you'll learn more about that as it goes on.
Yeah, the synth is called an accessed virus and it's a very iconic synth in keyboard and synth world. It's very well known and it sounds awesome.
I think that song that we wrote was like 2 weeks before we came to MagFest. I mean, Dave said we're playing at MagFest, so we have to play a song now to really hit the audience with the Salamandos. Well, this is our opportunity. Let's get the t-shirts over there. We'll take a few things with us and see if we can give us a few posters and t-shirts away and stuff. And well, I'll get some lyrics together and come up with a top line to go over Dave's music. And we just sort of did it online a few times. I'd send Dave a couple of emails, and what about this? And then eventually Dave came up one evening. It was about 40, 50 miles drive to my house, and it was a horrible evening. And he just sat in my office with his keyboard and my mic set up and everything. And we just sort of worked out the main parts of the song and sang the verses and wrote some of the lyrics together there. And it was Dave that came up with the hook, which has got into a lot of people's heads after hearing it. And
I think one of the cool things about that hook was after we played at MagFest, that's all we heard, isn't it, for the next 4 days?
Yeah.
People singing.
Yeah, it kind of became a call and response the entire weekend.
Tune.
It did, and what a great hotel that is, because it's so big and it's so echoey. So if somebody does it, and then not only do you get the echo, you get the response from people on the other side of the hotel, which is about a mile away.
In one of the lobby areas, and we could hear a lot of people sort of making the noise. But it was we refined it a little bit more for the version that we put on YouTube, and we've recorded it. And I think there was a longer version of it, which you can get with the comic if you download that. But it just all seemed to come together. And I just wanted to make the lyrics sort of tie in with the story and what was going to happen. And so it was just a simple, stupid song, but we've got more with lyrics, and
indeed, coming your way
we've got
soon.
a mixture of instrumental stuff and vocal stuff, haven't we? So
we have, yeah.
So long as I don't have to be inside for a year after I hear it, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's good.
So at the top of this, Hyle and I kind of bared ourselves how much of an inspiration you both have been to us. And in advance of this episode, we took some questions from folks in our audience. And this is kind of a reverse of that from our friend in the community, Alter Mentality, aka Courtney. What kind of media have you both enjoyed in your lives that you consider your artistic inspirations?
I mean, for me, very much films. I don't tend to listen to video game soundtracks at all. But it's the films that I watch. I was watching a film last night, in fact, with John Travolta, and it's called Basic, and it's a really cool film. I don't know if you've actually seen it, but I find films really inspirational. And as soon as I've watched them, I've forgotten the soundtrack, but it's those stories, those emotional connections that spark ideas for music. So for me, it's always been film. That's primarily been the thing that sparked my imagination. And things like skiing and cycling and stuff, I find that when I'm doing something really fast and moving, that really gets ideas going as well. So I suppose sport as well would have to be the next one.
Yeah, you're very active, aren't you, Dave? You know,
Sometimes.
you've always said you like to go, and when you're exercising, you'll often come up with ideas. But I think for me, there's so many things that can influence you. I think you can look back to anything that sort of made you smile. The Saturday morning cartoons. I remember even now, last year, my wife and I would sit on a Sunday morning eating our breakfast in our pajamas watching Ulysses 31 or 32, I don't know, I can't remember, and Jason the Wheeled Warriors, and a lot of Saturday morning cartoons from the late 80s that I just think there was a style then that it's sort of disappeared now. And as I say, that era of golden, the 80s, Back to the Future style, Indiana Jones, that golden age of time at the movies, that always feels very glitzy and sparkly to me, and very emotional. And for me, the age I was at when I was watching those kind of things, I think they really sort of influenced me. And I was also into a lot of martial arts films when I was a kid, and so combining art with a love of cartoons and martial arts, and also being what was also, which I suppose is the musical side of it. I was just quite into rock music when I was a teenager. Just a mixture of those three things. I think music, games, and TV. I think they're three things that I just enjoy. And I think mixing the three media together to come up with a new story is a nice thing to do. And food. I'm quite heavily influenced by food too.
It all comes across in your work, everything but food. I wouldn't guess that.
Talking about food, in fact, good reminder, I'm actually, I know people can't see me at the moment, but I am actually, before I started this, I said I would put my chicken on. I am actually wearing a chicken. I've actually got to go and turn it round, and I'll be back in 30 seconds. So
rotate the chicken.
Just, indeed. And, but only
I've
you...
got frittata.
Only
so
you guys get
I was going to actually sit and eat that here.
Okay, 2 seconds.
It might be quite rude to eat in front of you. So while Dave goes and rotates his chicken...
Not a euphemism. He's actually rotating a chicken.
Yes, well, he likes to do that on a Saturday night. It helps him to unwind. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many things now. And when I think there's a big revival, too, with some of those things I mentioned, with the likes of Stranger Things and a lot of the things that we've been watching on Netflix just recently, particularly while we've had so much time to sit and watch Netflix and get fat and eat lots of chocolate and pizza and stuff like that. But it's time for me to start moving again and getting out there and taking inspiration from other things, or else I'm just going to start writing characters based on food and chocolate, which is probably not good. They're coming.
I mean, it would, you can draw inspiration from anything, and so long as you put your heart and soul into it, I'm sure we would be along for the ride. David is back. Chicken is rotated. Keep us updated on its progress.
I will do. It's our oven's not very good at the moment, so it's going to take a long time. It's still not up to temperature.
In the meantime, I do have a question about your music.
Okay.
Your music, obviously beloved across generations now. And, I don't need to list the tracks. Everybody knows Aquatic Ambience, Stickerbush Symphony. They're considered some of the finest gaming compositions of all time. And then there's others like Forest Interlude, Donkey Kong Country 2 that I think have dramatically risen in reputation in recent years. And then, you got relatively recent songs. I guess it's been 7 years. But like Grassland Groove from Tropical Freeze is a favorite that's really taken off. But I know how it is when you put everything into something and it doesn't catch on. And then something you don't think much of is what ends up catching fire instead. So I've always wanted to ask you, are there any pieces of yours, any tracks that you absolutely adore that you feel are underrated or undervalued and not celebrated enough?
No, because it's not down to me to judge, is it, really?
Oh, come on. I'm sure
it's not, is it? I mean, which creates, I mean, there were, I'll give you an example. Years and years ago, we were doing Snake Rattle and Roll, and it was on the NES at the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I thought we'd finished it, and I'd spent games took considerably less time then. I think I spent 2 weeks on it, and I thought we got it finished. And so I thought, thank God for that. Went into Leicester, went out on a right bender that night, and I probably had a couple of beers or more. And it was decided whilst I was indulging that particular evening that they needed one more track for a final boss level, which was requested. And so I was phoned up, Tim phoned me up, and he said, we need another track. Can you come in? I said, I can't possibly come in. I'm still under the influence from last night, because I've probably been out till 4 a.m. or something like that. And so Stephen, he came and picked me up and took me in to do this piece of music for the boss level. And I had no idea what it really sounded like. I did the best I could under being heavily influenced by whatever I'd been drinking the night before. And I came back in on day after, which was probably the Monday, and I listened to it. I thought, that's just awful, awful, awful. So I said, can I redo it? Because I could do a much better job now. My head's clear. And they said, it's too late. It's gone off. We sent it off, but we love the track. So, since then, I can't really judge tracks. The tracks I love, like there's on Tropical Freeze, I forget which one it's for. Levels as they appear in the game are different to what I name them, so I'm never quite sure which one it is. There's one in there which I've mentioned before, which I really like, but it doesn't really get perhaps the love that I imagined it might. But it's not again, it's not really for me to decide if people like things. I mean, Stickerbush Symphony, they just sat on the shelf for months and months and months. Was only put in the last week of development because they decided that they were going. They got this spare level for Thorns. And I'd originally written it for a water level, and seeing as there was no water, it was never ever going to be used. It was only because they were short of finishing stuff at the end of the development that actually went into the game at all. And that's how development goes. It's probably, I do things I like, but it's never good to get too hooked or attached to something, because ultimately everybody else is going to decide whether they like it or not. And it's completely different as to what I feel about stuff.
I guess I've got kind of the same question for Kev. Are there any characters you've designed that you've been taken aback by their explosion in popularity? And are there any personal favorites you have that maybe got a more understated reaction?
Are there any characters I thought would have been better received? All of them. No. No, I was surprised. I think the one thing that just humbles me is the Donkey Kong redesign, because I've said it before when people have asked me the same question. about Donkey Kong, and I got the opportunity to put this new face basically on a character which was probably didn't really need anything doing to it. It would have been fine, but they wanted a new look. Nintendo wanted a redesign, and it needed to. There wasn't a physical model of the character anyway, and so I'd got into the habit of drawing eyes in a certain way on the Battletoads, and it was basically just a V, like, or a W, if you like, with the eyes with a heavy shadow underneath them. And when I got the opportunity to do DK, it was just obvious that that's what a mountain gorilla's eye has, the heavy brow. And I thought, well, I'll draw it like that. It reads really well from a distance when it's a little sprite. And so I did that. And I didn't think it looked that good because I just drew this. I didn't really think it looked as good as the original design. And so I was surprised when it was accepted. And then when it was actually made as a 3D model, that it looked good and it worked well, and it's still the same, pretty much the same shape and design that we see like 20 odd years later. So yeah, that I was surprised that was as well received as it was, because I thought that it was just going to keep going forwards and backwards to Nintendo with plenty of design mods. Saying, can we do this to it? Can we do that to it? But it wasn't. It was pretty much straight off. And I'm glad that you like Diddy, because I think he's a cool character. He doesn't look amazing or anything, but he's just a simple monkey with a hat and a t-shirt on. But he's quite a fun guy. So I'm pleased with how he turned out. But there's plenty of shelved characters and things that I did. That are in box files at Rare somewhere, I'm sure. And when I look at some of my old artwork, I look at them and think, God, how did these things ever even make it into a video game? But I think that's part of the charm, isn't it, really? Because if you look at most video game characters of a certain era, they're just very simple. And I think it doesn't really matter, because back in the day, you had a few shapes and a few pixels, and your eyes screws up as you played the game, and you used your imagination and say, I was playing Castlevania, that character looked amazing. And you look at it now and it's just a few pixels really, with a repeated warp cycle, like 2 or 3 frames of animation. But I think nowadays you have to put a lot more finesse into those characters. You can't get away with what you could get away with years ago. So, which I'm finding now working at Playtonic. There's fortunately, we've got a team of people we're all from that same era, and we've all designed characters in a certain style, and so we don't take them too seriously. I don't think we're ever going to be producing anything that looks super realistic, and I think it's nice if you can sit back and laugh at them sometimes too. So, but I'm appreciative of any character. Anybody that enjoys the characters. And I look at the Battletoads now. Behind me, there's a picture. I don't know if you can see it there. An amazing artist drew, and he draws them so much better than I do. So, it doesn't suppose it really matters. I think as long as people recognise what a character is, you'll see so many different renditions of everything. And say the Battletoads have been reinvented now, and they look totally different, but I still love them.
Well, speaking of underappreciated characters, we have a listener question from DJ Cat. And DJ Cat says, this is for Kev. You are well known for doing the voice of Tricky the Triceratops from Star Fox Adventures, and did a great job with that. However, if I'm not mistaken, the voice credits for Diddy Kong Racing are less known. Did you also voice Tricky in Diddy Kong Racing? If not, do you know who did? Can you shed some light on who voiced the other boss characters from that absolute masterpiece of a game? I guess this might be for both of you, too.
I did do a couple on DKR, but I can't remember. May have done Tricky, and we may have messed around with speeding things up and slowing them down to get a different pitch. I think we all had a go at that on the team, so it could be any number of people. I may have done Tricky. I don't know. I definitely did him on Star Fox Adventures, but I'm not sure. he didn't really say very much, did he, in DK?
No,
really?
Yeah.
No, 'cause we had so little memory. I think we had 12 megabytes, which is nothing. So when it came down to doing vocal samples, that they would have had to have been as short as possible and as flexible as possible, because they would have been used every which way possible at different pitches and slowed down with different attacks and that kind of stuff, just to make sure
one of the artists
sample.
called Keith Ribet did the
Keith, yeah,
Walrus.
he did, in fact. That was Keith.
Remember that one, but
Did John,
maybe I did.
Johnny.
One thing I didn't do was Goldeneye. Everybody thinks I did Goldeneye on the credits, and I didn't do any James Bond.
Yeah, I saw that listed on your Moby Games credits. It's James Bond uncredited, and then I was like, I don't know if that's accurate or not, because I've never heard that before. But
unless they did a grunt or something and used it from KI, and when somebody gets hit, it goes ah. But I didn't voice any James Bond character. No, Killer Instinct. Glacius, Jago, which are the ones, the rest of them were probably synthesized or taken from voice bank CDs that we had at the time, which I can remember listening to Riptor and Saberwolf. And then one morning I was watching, it just happened to be on a Scooby-Doo cartoon. And I picked up the phone just to call my friend and say, listen, put Scooby-Doo on now. It's Riptor. And there was a monster running along, and they were using exactly the same sample as we were using for Riptor, one of his moves. And every now and then I'll watch a film, and there'll be a dog, something like Turner and Hooch or anything like that. But it's the amount of films now that you'll watch, if you find a dog, I guarantee at some point the dog will be unhappy or get a hit or something horrible like that, and he'll yelp, and it is Saberwolf's yelp. It's exactly the same sample as Saberwolf makes when he gets hit. So, and I've heard it. I keep stopping, and my wife, I'd say to her, listen, that is from a CD that we used, and I'm not going to impersonate it, but I'll let the purists and the enthusiasts search for those sound effects. But
that happens a lot with films as well. Even now, I was watching something yesterday, and I recognised the Crow sample that we used for whichever game back in the day. And you think, wow, you just thought that it'd just gone out with a microphone these days. And you can go out with your iPhone and record things like that and get a great sample. But no, they were still using those same sample CDs we used decades ago.
I seem to recall an anecdote you told me at MagFest, Kev, regarding Bubbler the Octopus's voice.
Bubbler. I might have done Bubbler. I don't know. It was...
It is quite a few years ago now.
Yeah, but I think along the same lines of Glacius, because when I did Glacius, I put a lot of yogurt in my mouth to make a sort of horrible noise when I was in the sound booth. Because when we first began doing sound effects, and it was Robin Beanland that was recording the sounds for KI for the characters, and when we did our first few recordings, we'd only just started moving into recording vocals, hadn't we, Dave? And so
you had, yeah.
It was literally a microphone and a tape recorder, and I would sit there with Robin, and I was going yeah, and I remember Martin Hyle says it just sounds like a Brummy Ninja, and then we ended up because I kept doing what I would do at my karate class and saying yeah, and then you could just hear this Birmingham accent, and so then we got a small. Stephen built a sound booth, didn't we? And that's when we started.
As sound booths go, it was basic, it was small, it was quite smelly as well. And it was those army blankets that it was made from that doubled over all the way around. It was only small. It was probably about a metre square, wasn't it? It was tiny, maybe 2 metres square.
It was like some patio doors, some sliding doors that he built up against the wall, and he lined it with all of the Army and Navy blankets that we'd got. So when you went in there, all you could smell was this cloth. And then when he closed the door, you felt this vacuum sort of pull your ears. If you put your finger on your ears now, when the door closed, you felt that happen. And it's almost like there was it was such a vacuum in there. You almost, if you try and talk into an empty glass and push it up, that was sort of happening to your voice. And I can remember that Robin Beanland left me in there once and shut the door and just went out, and no one could hear you, and you were just trapped in this glass case, basically.
Yeah, it was basically an anechoic chamber, as in there's no reflections whatsoever. The sound goes nowhere, so all the energy stays where your mouth is, and it's really hard as well to balance in those conditions because there is no reflection, there's no perception of anything coming back to you. It was quite,
especially when there's no oxygen either.
Exactly. So it would have been,
yeah,
indeed, anaphylactic, and
but they did improve on all of that as we got that. I think when we got the new premises, we had the fancy sound studio, didn't we? And
yes,
we improved on all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, fortunately that changed as we did bigger and better games.
So this game has come up several times at this point, but we got a lot of listener interest in it. So Star Fox Adventures is a game you're both known for that's absolutely beloved in our community. I think it's one of David's finest soundtracks, by which I mean it's one of David's soundtracks.
Okay.
And also one of the best looking games on the GameCube. A lot of people are very obviously fascinated in its development. How did it feel for the both of you when the ROM of Dinosaur Planet leaked out to the internet earlier this year?
I'm surprised it took so long, to be honest. I mean, I thought that would have come out years ago. So I don't know where that came from. But
wasn't us.
Also, I mean, as far as the sound goes for the N64 version, I always felt the sound was much better on the N64, and I went over to the GameCube. It was more of a compromise system, I thought. So it was nice that the original probably made it out there, so people could see what we've done so far with the N64 version.
It was really pushing it, wasn't it?
It was,
and it was nearly, it was quite far through. It's when I saw it, I was just shocked because I had to sort of look at it twice, and I thought, oh, God, because it was so long ago, and Star Fox Adventures had become quite established. We'd forgotten a lot of the work that was originally put in, and I always remember it started off with Timber, and then became a wolf, which then became Saberwolf. I remember all of that, but I couldn't remember seeing Crystal running around as a main character the way that she was. And then, I made the graphics. I can remember doing it now. I can see it. And I was just, oh, God, yeah, we did all this and that. And I thought that was really far through. And then we made the big changes to it, which were for the better because it became a bigger, better looking, better sounding game. And it was easier to work on. But, the company was changing then anyway. We were getting a lot more people that were more specialized particular tasks, animators and concept artists, and so we were able to put more finesse into it on the better system. But what we managed to get with the relatively small team when it was in its N64 form was pretty amazing, really. And so it's nice to see. But as Dave said, when I think about it now, I'm surprised it did take that long because it's a long time ago, and I'm sure there's plenty of other ROMs out there with other failed or
earlier versions,
games that went through a transformation that are just waiting to be discovered because there's so many of them, hundreds.
Well, we'll have you back on when those leak, and we'll ask you about them at the appropriate time. Before we wrap things up here, for the both of you, your work obviously has left a lasting impact, as we've already discussed, as Kev mentioned as much with the modern Donkey Kong design. But, one of the worst kept secrets right now is that in Universal Studios in Osaka, Japan, they are actually building under construction a whole Donkey Kong Country theme park right now. Based heavily, on your works. Is it ever surreal for you to, take stock of the things you have done, having the staying power that it does, that it will outlive you and your descendants, and just persist for as long as we have a civilization? How does that feel?
I really thought about it.
I didn't mean to fill you with existential despair or anything. If aliens come down when we've long gone,
and they discover this great big plastic DK, and they're trying to work out what it says on his tie. And
Stayed in Kev.
And I'm responsible for that, and they'll be examining it and saying, well, what is this creature that used to inhabit this planet? That'll be pretty amazing, I guess. But I mean, that character in particular, I don't like to take too much credit for him, because it was Shigeru Miyamoto's character that gave me the platform to stand on there, and I got the opportunity to redesign it. And yeah, he's been improved over the years and he looks great, but it's still thanks to the original design. So Nintendo, they've got a lot to answer for, because they've created a lot of characters, which I think, as I say, in a couple of thousand years, somebody could come down to this planet and look and say, what was going on here? What is this?
You mentioned Indiana Jones, and it strikes me as just the way the back and forth of the creative process, where you were inspired by Indiana Jones, and then obviously we've got these minecart sequences in Donkey Kong Country, and Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong are kind of like Indiana Jones and Short Round from Temple of Doom, and then now we have a whole roller coaster being built based on that, and it's just, even as somebody on the outside, is just somebody who grew up with these games, it's staggering to think about how these things kind of snowball and become bigger than all of us.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think we could have ever imagined when we first did it that it was we'd still be talking about it, 2 years later.
A few notes on a piece of paper and a few bars that Dave puts together. At the time, you never really think about that. You just do the task. We need a character for this. So you've got a few scribbles, as you've seen the kind of scribbles that I've been putting on the internet. They're just very rough, and obviously everything starts from scratch, and a few pixels or whatever, and it suddenly becomes something huge that everybody's buying or talking about, and everybody's enjoying, more importantly. But it continues, doesn't it? And hopefully they'll be buying Salamandos and playing Salamandos music in 1,000 years' time.
You've given us a taste of it near the top of the episode, but as we end things, and no pressure, but I just wanted to say we got so many requests for this, so many. It was honestly surprising. Would you like to make one final pitch for Salamandos, Kev? As tricky.
Oh my God. Hey guys, you gotta go and buy Salamandos. My dad's a King Earthwalker, and he'll bash you up if you don't go out and get it now.
For more on Kev David, and to purchase the first issue of Salamandos, please head to DK Creations Ltd, that's Ltd.com. And you can also check them out on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you both so much for being here. And David, please check on your chicken. I'm worried about it.
This has been a File 2 production.
Qué rico.